All right. I think I see a ton of people in the chat already. Great. Great. Getting validation that I'm not talking to myself. There are people who see me. Amazing. Hello. Great to see you all. If you guys like, while we wait for everyone else to stream in, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the type of research that you're doing. I think some of you are up to some really amazing things. So if you want to just drop in the chat a little intro about yourself, the type of research that you do, that'd be great. I think one of the coolest things about Elicit is that there are people who are using it who are doing such different types of research. And I've just been really inspired by all of the really cool things everyone is doing. So excited to have you all here today. I think we can give people a couple more minutes to join us.
Hi, everyone. Jungwon, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy. I'll be keeping track of some questions for our Q&A after.
Yeah, Jeremy, if you could also keep an eye out for any Elicit teammates that join and add them to the wing, that would also be great. I'm not sure exactly what's the best way to find.
Yeah, for sure. I will keep an eye out.
Thank you. All right, we already have 200 people here today. If you're just joining us now, we're sharing a little bit about the research that each participant here does. Want to learn a little bit more about who all is here. Yeah, everyone is just doing really cool things. So feel free to drop in the chat a little bit about the research that you're working on. And who knows, maybe you'll even find some really interesting collaborators here today. I think we have a bunch of people here now, so we can probably get started. I have a ton of things that I'm so excited to share with you today. We've been building a lot. There's so much more that we're still really excited to build. There's a lot that I want to go through. I guess in terms of logistics, this is our first time trying Crowdcast. I think it's working pretty well so far, but if we run into any issues, we'll be grateful for your kind of like patience and grace there. I think a lot of people have found the chat, so feel free to keep using that. If you want to ask specific questions, there's actually a separate place called Q&A all the way to the right of the screen. It would be great if you could ask your questions there so that we can find them, because I think otherwise there's a lot of activity in the chat and it might be kind of hard to figure out what the top questions are. So if you add questions specifically to the Q&A part of the Crowdcast app, then we'll get to them later in the Q&A section and try to address them. So yeah, just as a quick intro to me, you've probably been getting a ton of my emails. I'm Jungwon, co-founders of Elicit. I run product and operations here. I'm joined here with Jeremy, another member of the product team. There might be a couple other members of the Elicit team in the mix. If they are, it'd be great if you could join the wing so that we can kind of involve you in Q&A. As they join, I'd be happy to kind of introduce them as well. But yeah, we've been building Elicit together for a while. Really excited to be supporting your research and show you what's next. Broadly, our mission is to scale high-quality reasoning. I think with language models, we really have the potential to make high-quality reasoning much more plentiful, much more comprehensive, to make that a lot easier. We're getting started with literature review because understanding what is kind of already known or already published is really a necessary foundation to being able to do more complex research. So that's really our focus now, but long-term, our vision is to really automate many more reasoning and research workflows beyond just literature review. We are recording this and we'll send this out to everyone who has an Elicit account afterwards. So if you need to drop off early or you want to share it, we will send out the recording. It'll probably also be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards. And some of the details that I'll go through later today. Oh, hi Hi, Maggie.
Sorry, I didn't realize what I was doing. I'm gonna try to leave now.
That's okay. We're having fun. That's Maggie. She's our product designer. She's like done some of the magic magic features that I want to show you today. I think I see and this is Panda, one of our infrastructure engineers. Hi, Panda.
Yeah, I'm adding everyone and moving you to the wing at the top so we can see the team members. I'll move you to the wing right now, Panda. Sorry, Joe, wanted to interrupt.
Yeah, I think I was just saying we'll send out the recording afterwards. A lot of the details, there will be, we'll get into some logistics and details, and I'm happy to send that out in the email afterwards as well. So if you miss something, don't worry about it. We're happy to share more information. In terms of how I want to use our time today, I think I'm most excited to show you demos of this beta product that we've been building for the last few months. You might have seen people talk about it in Slack or on Twitter. So I'm really excited to kind of show you what the future of Elicit looks like. After that, we'll talk a little bit about the transition plan, like what it looks like to move everyone onto this beta product and what you can expect over the next few weeks. I'm also excited to show you, in addition to what we've already built, some features we have coming down the pipeline. A lot of them are addressing things that you guys have been asking for a lot. So I'm really excited to show you how we've been thinking about some of the problems that we know you need help with. We'll do Q&A at the end, probably around 15 minutes for Q&A there. And again, we'll do our best to address all the questions afterwards if we can't get to all of them. All right, so I'm going to get started with demos. Let me start by sharing my screen. Okay. Can everybody, I think you can all see this beta product. Let me just check to make sure everyone can see it okay. Yep, okay, I see, mirroring. So I think I'm sharing my screen. Jeremy, jump in and call out if I haven't run into any technical difficulties, but
Looks great.
Okay, great. This is our beta product. Pretty different from what Elicit currently looks like. So as you know, Elicit today is helping you find a bunch of papers. You ask a query and you get back a table of papers. The version of Elicit we're really moving into is one that already starts helping you automate a lot more research workflows. So we're trying to take the components that we built to automate this basic paper discovery experience and really use them to automate much more complex reasoning. I'm going to start with finding research papers. This is going to be very familiar. It's pretty much the Elicit experience that you get today with some new additions. After that, I'll show you how to scale up extracting information from your own papers. And then one that's really pretty computationally intensive, which summarizes concepts across multiple papers. And hopefully, as I go through each of them, I'll kind of show you how they build onto each other, and you'll get a sense of the longer term vision we have with how Elicit can automate a lot more reasoning. So you can see now going forward, there are going to be 3 new workflows on the Elicit homepage. Let's start with finding scientific research papers. Once you come in, this should be pretty familiar. It's a search, the search bar that you kind of get today. This time I'll ask a question, what are the effects of creatine on Alzheimer's? Slightly different take on the very popular Elicit suggested query. I've seen that creatine might have effects on cognition. I'm kind of curious, does it help with neurodegenerative diseases? A couple things that are new. So there's going to be a bunch of kind of account management features that are here. I'll hide that for now. Some things have moved, so you'll still get a summary of the top papers, but now instead of just the top 4, you're going to get the top 8. I think even in the chat, I saw that people are really excited about the summary feature. So this is like a pretty good introduction to some of the top papers. And from here, you can click into each paper and go into more detail again. And if you want to connect, let me try that again. I've been disconnected. I'm going to reconnect. So yeah, again, searching for papers, I think you saw the paragraph summary. Just like in Elicit today, you can kind of click in to go deeper into the paper. There's more information here. I think one of the things I'm consistently surprised by is that in a lot of publisher pages, they don't show the citation count, but I find it really helpful to have that right there. Links out to kind of the DOI page, the Semantic Scholar page, if you want more information. But now it's a much easier reading experience that when you click into a paper, that will persist. And then this is a table that you're familiar with. Each row here is a paper. We're still searching over the Semantic Scholar database. So that's about 200 million papers across many of the top journals, across many different domains, still generating a summary of the abstract that's specific to your question. That's all generated on the fly. And then, you can sort by different features like, recency. I think that's really important. You have different, instead of starring now, we have different kind of selection features. So you can select certain papers to show more like them. When that happens, what we're doing is doing a forward and backward pass through the citation trail. So we're looking at papers that were referenced in these papers, and also looking at papers that later cited these papers, and then using that information to find other papers that are more relevant. I find that especially helpful when if I'm not getting super relevant paper results. I think it's really helpful to use this kind of show more like these feature to seed a couple of papers that seem really promising and then kind of iterate from there. What you'll start to see here are some kind of different steps. These steps are not super relevant for this workflow, but going forward, I'll kind of explain when these start to become really helpful. But overall, the vision here is we really want to emphasize transparency with Elicit, and kind of help you in a very, very step-by-step way, so that every step along the journey, you get a sense of what Elicit did, and then eventually you can give it feedback and then iterate from there. So then here, going back to this table of papers, you can see you can still add columns. When I look at some of these papers, I think I'm noticing that some of the studies were done in mice. So it might be helpful to distinguish between just like kind of identify the organism and figure out which studies were done in mice versus humans. So if I add a column, I can immediately start to extract that information, get a better sense of what type of organism the paper studied. I might be interested in maybe looking at the specific outcome measured. How do they measure the effect of creatine on Alzheimer's? And you can see I can immediately extract that information from all of the papers. A new thing that we have now is when you click on it, you can kind of see where in the paper we got the information from right in line. So you don't have to, it's like much easier to check if the answer is correct or not. So here's where it says the kind of organism studied was in mice. Similarly for outcome measured. And now we're also doing 2 of the most relevant quotes as well. So again, it's really important. And I know this is really important to researchers as well. A lot of people are worried about hallucination and how to check for that. We do a lot on kind of in the background to try and reduce hallucination. One of the things we do is generally try to make the task pretty small and really grounded, obviously in high quality academic papers. But despite that, there are still going to be cases where the language models make mistakes or generate incorrect information. In that case, we just think it's really important to make it very easy for you to spot that, which is why we're always trying to link every single thing that a language model does to the direct part of the paper that it comes from, and just make that so convenient to check so that you know right away whether that answer is correct or not. From here, if you want to go deeper, you can open the paper. We'll only have the full text of open source papers. Otherwise, we'll be using information from the abstract. But again, you can kind of check where in the abstract or the full text the information specifically came from. And then I think one cool thing about this new user experience is that you can open up a bunch of papers in this as new tabs. So if you find papers as you're going through this that you're really excited about, you can kind of queue up a to-read list and then very easily work through them. If you skim through the abstract and realize it's not relevant, you can delete it, and you'll still have this main table section. So start broad here, figure out what you want to go deep into. And again, all of the language model work is very much linked to the place in the paper that it comes from. And then other things that we still have filters. So if you want to filter for a certain publication time, you can do that. Specific study types, you can do that. If you want to make sure the abstract contains a specific word, you can type that in here and filter to papers with certain keywords that overlap or exclude. If you're getting a bunch of kind of adjacent but irrelevant papers, you can exclude certain keywords. And then you also have the ability to export into a CSV or a BIB file to import into your reference managers as well. So that's table of papers. This should be pretty familiar. There are a couple of new features we still want to move over, but this is mostly what you're getting in Elicit today with a few new additions, a nicer user interface, the ability to open multiple papers in tabs, better kind of attribution of language model answers to the sources in the paper, and like a richer overall paragraph summary as well. So that should all be familiar. This is a slightly new interface on top of that. Oh, I think actually, I guess one thing I didn't show, and let me see if I can quickly do this again. There's one more thing that's kind of nice, which is that you can also now much more easily copy the summary of the papers. So here's a copy button. If you have a Word document like this, you can just very easily copy that paragraph summary. So if you want to put that in wherever you're taking notes and then kind of edit it or work from it or work with it from there, that's a lot easier now too. Okay, so that's finding papers. Now I want to show you extracting information from papers. So this is a use case that we've run into a lot as we've talked to people doing systematic reviews. Currently in Elicit, you can upload up to 20 papers, and we've really worked on, Adrian actually has worked a lot on scaling this up so that we can now upload up to 100 papers, and we really want to keep scaling this up. So we're going to start, testing whether we can upload 200 papers, really excited to get to the point where you can kind of upload 10,000 papers or upload your entire Zotero library or like a very large corpus that you have. And so here the goal is to really save people a lot of time. We're noticing that researchers have crazy spreadsheets where they're copying and pasting the same information again and again from multiple papers very manually, spending probably minutes to hours per paper. And I think a lot of this is something that we can automate so that you can spend more time thinking about the data, looking for kind of patterns and themes in the data, as opposed to copying and pasting things from PDFs to spreadsheets. Again, this was very heavily inspired by the systematic review process. We see that as one of the most rigorous and intensive, but very, very expensive, time-consuming, and kind of in terms of dollar-wise, very expensive process. And we think if we can automate that, obviously we can really save a lot of the effort that goes into producing systematic reviews. But it would just be really incredible if you could generate a systematic review or meta-analysis for any topic that you wanted on the fly. Currently, it takes like 5 people years to produce a systematic review. Anyways, really passionate about systematic reviews, very heavily inspired by it. Really cool that now you can upload up to 100 papers here. You can see all of them here. I think this is like 92 or so. They're all going to be streaming in. And then again, you can kind of automatically extract data from all of them. So I'm kind of interested in figuring out, okay, where were all of these studies done maybe, and like who funded these papers? So let me just try 2 of these columns. As you can see, you can also add a custom column here. So if you we have a bunch of predefined columns here. A lot of them are pretty heavily inspired by the information that people in biomedical research need. But if that's not what you need, you can just type in your own question, and we'll extract that information automatically from the papers as well. Oh yeah, so some of these papers are hard to parse. So yeah, that's also kind of what you can currently do in Elicit. I think this is probably the thing that really sets Elicit apart, and is basically one of the most powerful features that Elicit has. So now, in addition to parsing 100 PDFs automatically, I've kind of in seconds extracted information about where all the studies are done and who they were funded by. And again, I can kind of click into the paper and see, okay, this study was presumably done in Avon. Where in the paper did we get that idea from? Open the paper and then look at it more closely there, or like read the context around it. And similarly for funding source, kind of where did we get this information from? Where was it funded by? So we definitely see a direct application of this for people who are doing systematic reviews. So obviously this is kind of an explicit step, the data extraction step. Well, I guess you could use this for data extraction. You can also use it for screening in the systematic review process. But in general, if you're just kind of drowning in tons of PDFs, you're maybe at the start of your literature review project, and you'd rather not spend a lot of time reading abstracts or papers that might turn out to be pretty irrelevant, you can use this workflow to get a better sense of what the paper actually did, and then really like rule out irrelevant papers much more quickly. I'm excited for researchers to use this. I think some researchers are kind of creating databases of papers and doing a lot of extraction. I think this is directly applicable for creating a database of papers. And I think ultimately, if you want to look for interesting themes across the research, this is kind of like a great way to extract information and see, okay, who's funding a bunch of stuff in this space? Where have all the studies been done? Are there any regions that have been neglected, for example? Maybe that's a good opportunity for you to generalize your work to as well. Yeah, and I think in addition to kind of time savings, I think teams are spending a lot of dollars really hiring research assistants to do a lot of this work. As a researcher yourself, I think it can also be kind of it can feel like drudgery to do a lot of copying and pasting, and it can be kind of emotionally taxing to do a lot of that work. And I'm hoping we can automate that for you so that you can really do the much richer thinking of what does this all mean? What are the high level themes here? Let's see. Oh yeah, I know we have a ton of questions around what happens to the papers when they get uploaded. You're the only one that sees them. It's very, very specific to you. So other people can't see your papers. And right now we're not storing them. So I think over time we'll start to build richer collections, which I'm really excited to tell you about. But this won't get shared with anybody else. Okay, so that's extracting. And so one of the things I'm really excited to do now is show you the last new workflow, discovering concepts across papers. I've shown you how we can find papers for you, but in this workflow, you still kind of have to, it kind of assumes that you'll still be doing a lot of the paper reading. I've shown you now how we can extract information from lots of papers at scale. And the thing I want to do next is show you how we can use the extractions that we got from those papers to really try and do a better concept mapping or organization of all of the academic literature. So now I'm going to try this discover concepts across papers workflow, and I'm going to do data sets for measuring causal reasoning in large language models. And hopefully this also gives you a sense of how Elicit generalizes across domains. I've done a little bit of biomedical. The PDFs I uploaded were kind of all across many domains, and this one is now in machine learning. Okay, this one's pretty different. So what's happening here? I'll start kind of at the end. Actually, I'll start at the beginning. So what we're doing is this is a query. We're doing kind of this paper search. The thing that was just its own workflow is now part of a much bigger workflow, finding a bunch of papers. In this case, we found 56 papers that are relevant for this query. Then we're going to kind of automatically run the extraction and try and find the concepts that you're looking for, in this case, data sets, across all of those papers. We're adding another step for deduping across all of those different concepts, in case some of them are repeated. And then lastly, we're going to sort by relevance. So now you can see how this chain of steps becomes really useful. You can go back and see every single thing that Elicit considered, how it grouped, how it found, how it kind of extracted concepts from certain snippets of the paper, how it grouped concepts together. So I'm really hoping that this gives you a lot of transparency around how we ended up at this final list. I think that's really missing from a lot of other language model-based tools and ChatGPT. First of all, it's wrong in a lot of cases, but even when it's right, you don't have a great sense of what was left out, or how do I know that this was like the best kind of answer possible, what was considered. And now with Elicit, you can see, okay, a lot of this information came from looking at all of these papers. And then the exciting thing is going forward, every step here will be editable. So let's say you find a bunch of these papers, you think some of them are relevant, then again, you can delete them, you can add your own. So you can see how these features that are currently across multiple workflows kind of can come together into this one. And similarly, you can give the model feedback on maybe some of it's deduping, maybe you think these are actually not the same, you can correct it, and then Elicit can learn accordingly. This is a pretty complex workflow. If you imagine like reading 56 papers, going through and trying to find the data set in all of them, putting it together and grouping them, I think that would take you a really, really long time. It would take you a long time just to find the papers. You can see that was done in seconds. So this is like it is very computationally intensive for us as well. And so this is the final list. You end up with just the concepts that you're looking for, right? So specifically all of the data sets. And again, this is where Elicit really stands out. We directly link it to the paper where we got this information from. So again, you can kind of, check Elicit's work, open the paper, and kind of see the context of where the answer was generated from. You'll see sometimes something that says the source is generated. In that case, what's happening is, in addition to getting these data sets from papers, we're also asking language models like ChatGPT for their perspective on this question. And that's to be like really extra comprehensive so that we don't miss anything, so that we can kind of be strictly better than the other language models for you. But it does mean you should probably double check this, because obviously there's some chance that it was hallucinated. So that's kind of what that source means. But hopefully we made it easier for you to identify what is grounded in the literature, and then you can kind of separately Google for this. Again, you can kind of open up a bunch of different papers and queue up the things that you want to read and look into them as well. So this is how we've like combined all the different steps, finding papers, extracting data, and then putting them together to create a much richer and more decision relevant organization of information that's currently trapped in a lot of PDFs. And then going forward, we want this to be the workflow. Not only we want like each step to be editable, but also the workflow itself to be editable. So we'll kind of create lots of tasks or building blocks for you, and you'll be able to add them together to automate your own workflow, maybe share them with your lab. If your professor or your PI has like a really good process for evaluating the quality of papers in their domain, they could create a workflow and share that with you. So we're really excited about taking those best practices that are currently pretty opaque and in people's minds, manifesting them in software so that they can be really easily shared and much more reproducible. Okay, so that's it for all of the new workflows. Yeah, I think zooming out, our vision here is really like, can we identify the core building blocks of reasoning? Can we put them together to automate really complex workflows? Can we enable you to put them together to automate custom workflows and share them? One way I think about it is like, I really want to make you guys data scientists of text, and that's really possible with language models in a way that wasn't before. So instead of this kind of very rigid, monolithic PDF paradigm, can we break apart these papers into their underlying claims, their data sets, the details of what they studied, and then make it much easier to run queries on top of all of that so that you can synthesize insights across papers and like evaluate each paper much more efficiently as well. And then this kind of process-driven approach is, broadly, Elicit is very process-oriented. So rather than trying to automate a literature review end-to-end for you or train a model on all of the academic papers, we're really carefully studying what the best experts do, trying to break that down step by step and automating each step at a time so that you not only get a really good answer, but can have a lot of confidence in the process that generated that answer and much more efficiently evaluate that process as well. Yeah, and then I think the other things to emphasize, let me go back to this. I want to kind of talk a little bit about the kind of product philosophy behind all of this. The way we really want to distinguish ourselves from other language model tools is like some of the core product values that we have. Maybe I didn't. Some of the other core product values that we have are we really want Elicit to be systematic, we really want Elicit to be transparent, and we really want Elicit to be unbounded. And so systematic means kind of going through a good process, covering a very, very large number of papers, being as comprehensive as we can. Transparent means showing you every step of the way what we did. And unbounded means, building Elicit so that you can kind of keep adding either more steps here or keep adding more inputs. So when we do things in a step-by-step way, it's much easier to go back to the step and then say, okay, add 500 more papers, please, and then run that down through the rest of the process. And I think this is really different from all of the other language model products. A lot of the other language model products are, either just trying to give you a really quick answer, but they're not very transparent about kind of how they arrived at the answer. But we really want to empower you to be able to search across tens of thousands of papers, check for every single failure mode, every single thing that could have been missed, every implication, and then synthesize all of that. So it's much more of like this batch kind of workflow paradigm than it is just like a chat back and forth, basically. I think that's a lot of the product that we've built so far that we're going to start rolling out. I want to give you a preview of a couple other things that are coming up. So a really common request was saving history. So we have that. Maggie's done a really great job of designing this. So we'll start to add kind of to the sidebar like a history of all the different sessions that you run so that you can kind of go back to them. We're thinking hard about how to create a general paper library so that you can kind of put all your papers here, just a separate place that's kind of separate from any query and from there create specific research projects. So if you have a core corpus of papers, you can run lots of different workflows on top of them without having to upload them every single time. And generally trying to get Elicit to a place where it becomes where you can kind of cumulatively build your knowledge over time, and you keep adding papers to Elicit, keep extracting more information from them, and like really over time build up a really good model within Elicit. So that you can see these are some of Maggie's initial designs, library, adding to projects. And then we're also thinking about how you can kind of upload other types of upload papers in different ways. So not just with PDFs, but DOIs, maybe some CSVs with metadata. Again, for people who are doing systematic reviews, I think, or trying to analyze tens of thousands of papers, it's much easier to upload a CSV of like 10,000 DOIs or paste in many DOIs, as opposed to going and finding the PDFs for all of them. So those are some of the features that I think people have been asking for a lot. I think some of these might help us kind of proxy the Zotero integration that everyone's been begging us for. So that's coming down the pipeline as well. And then, yeah, I think we'll also work, we've kind of been working a lot on this extract workflow, but also thinking about the screening part of the systematic review process, and how we can help you go from like 10,000 papers to 100 or 1,000 that you really want to read more. So that's something that we're thinking about a lot as well. And then another thing that's pretty important is that we are going to start introducing pricing. So for some of the new workflows, like discovering concepts across papers, they're obviously very intensive. You can see we had to search through a lot of papers and go through a lot of content in each of those papers. So we will start introducing pricing. The goal here is for basically everything that you're used to in Elicit staying free, and then all of the new stuff will require payment. So searching over or doing a basic search over a table of papers will continue to be free. But if you're kind of uploading a lot of papers yourself and extracting data from them, you will have to pay for that. And then discovering concepts across papers will also require payment as well. Our plan is to give you some free credits every single month, so that you can kind of keep trying a small number of the other workflows every month. So there will always be, there will be a version of Elicit that continues to be free. There will be things you can use that continue to be free. But if you're doing much more computationally intensive research, if we're really saving you a lot of time, that will have to be paid for, because like it kind of incurs a lot of costs on our end as well. Just really quickly, this is kind of what we're thinking: a credits-based model. You can, people will get credits for free, some default number of credits for free. And then if you want to do more intensive work on top of that, you can purchase more credits. So I think this is, it's really the best way to only pay for what you use. So we don't want you to have to pay if you're not using Elicit, but if you're excited about the results that you're getting back and you want more, then you can pay for that as well. Okay, so those are some of the details and features coming up. Let me see if I can probably stop sharing my screen. I think maybe just as a last thing, in terms of the rollout plan, we're probably going to keep scaling up access to this over the next few weeks, very, very, very roughly targeting end of the month for when this might be available for anyone to sign up and use, but that has a lot of uncertainty around it. If you want to get on the waitlist, if you want to kind of have access to it sooner, there's a waitlist link that we can send out that you can sign up, and we'll try to add you before that, or add you as we're continuing to scale up the beta. Within the next month or 6 weeks, we really want to transition everyone over to this product. So you'll start to see that, and then eventually we're seeing this as the main product that you use. There will be some period of overlap time with this and the version of Elicit that you've been using over the last few months. But then eventually we will sunset that product as well, so that we can really focus our work on this. So also in that process, if you're kind of running into some errors on the older version of Elicit, really appreciate your patience there. We're trying to invest a lot in this new product, and it's hard to kind of maintain both at the same time. A lot of these details I'll also share over email. So yeah, currently trying to target full transition to this probably by the end of September or so, but again, very much a work in progress. And then you might also see, just as like kind of an FYI, some domain name changes. We'll probably start sending more emails from elicit.com instead of elicit.org. So check your spam folders for that, and don't be alarmed if you see some emails from some new domains. That's all us. Okay, I think that's it for my demos. Oh boy, let me stop sharing. Okay. I think I'm back. All right. So that's it for demos. I'd love to go into Q&A next.
Yeah. Do you want me to prioritize some of the questions?
Yeah, and I think this is, I see that more otters have joined, which is great. So I think this will be a great place to kind of tag team as well.
Yeah, maybe we can everyone just quickly say your role, everyone in the wing. So I'm Jeremy. I'm a product intern here at Elicit. James, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yep, I am James. I lead the engineering team at Elicit, and I've got a few of my team on the call as well.
Maybe Maggie, do you want to go next?
Sure. Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm the product designer here.
Ian?
I'm Ian. I'm a ML engineer here.
And Justin?
I'm Justin. I'm also a machine learning engineer at Elicit.
Sarah, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Sarah. I'm the head of operations at Elicit.
And then Panda and Andreas.
Hey, I'm heading up infrastructure at Elicit.
I'm a CEO and other co-founder of Elicit.
Great. I think the first question, which is also a sort of cluster of questions that people have, is about systematic literature reviews. So we have Joseph and Lubna, who asked, can they use it for systematic literature reviews? And if so, how can they use it? And how can they trust the results?
Yeah, so we already have some people using it for systematic reviews. I think one of the steps in this is, like, obviously you can use it to find a bunch of papers. Elicit makes it easy to do some of the citation trail following. Like I said, you can select a bunch of papers. If you do show more like these, you'll do the forward and backward passive citation trails, again, to find more relevant papers. Then once you have the set of papers you're excited about, you can upload them to the extract workflow and extract data to do a more rigorous screening, or just kind of directly to, if there's, I think, a direct application to the extraction step of the systematic review as well.
Yeah. And another question was about, which is sort of related, is about hallucination risk. So several people were asking about how they can trust the authenticity or reliability, and does Elicit run the same risk of falsifying AI responses? So since you've covered a lot of this already, maybe we can go into the technical details more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds great. Do you want to move the people in the wing to the stage, or are people happy hanging out in the wing? I'm happy.
Yeah, maybe I can move
on stage.
James to the stage for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Welcome, James, to the stage. Oh, and Justin, welcome to the stage. How does it feel?
I'll have a yeah, this is a really good question. I'll have a crack at answering it, and if I miss a detail or there's a sort of extra layer on top, then I would appreciate someone else's opinion too. So hallucination definitely is still a problem, even with the more modern language models. It's fortunately a bit less of a problem now than it was before, but they tend to be a bit more pernicious. It's a bit harder to spot. So the main thing that we do, there's a couple of things, but I guess the main couple of things that we do to avoid hallucination are, number one, the whole way that we build Elicit is with this technique we call factored cognition, where we break down a problem into a sequence of slightly easier problems and a sequence of slightly easier problems. And it just turns out to empirically be the case that asking a language model to solve a kind of easier question tends to result in less hallucination. So by doing that decomposition and then asking a kind of more straightforward question, we can sidestep some of the issues. And then the second thing I would say is we just iterate a lot on the prompts and giving the model very specific instructions of, for example, only using the text which I provide answer this very specific question. It's not a kind of open-ended, what do you think about topic X kind of a task, which tends to mean that we can avoid facts being remembered or misremembered in a similar way to what I was mentioning before. Was there anything that you would add on top of that, Justin, or others? We can't hear
Justin.
In addition, the factored cognition approach also allows us to empower you, the user, to check our work essentially. So like when you add a column, we give you the answer, but then we also show you the section of the text that the answer came from. And we can do that because it's a two-step process to actually give you an answer. We first look and see, okay, what parts of the paper contain an answer to this question? And then only on that small part of the paper, then do we say, what's the answer to that question? So you can then go in and check that source, as opposed to if you just pasted the whole text of the paper in ChatGPT, you get an answer, you'd have to just kind of like read through and check the whole thing for yourself.
Great. Thanks to Justin and James for that. And I think that the next cluster of questions are around the limitations of Elicit. So maybe you both can stay on stage for this one. So yeah, several people were asking about the limitations, and I think that generally talking about the limitations of large language models and especially of Elicit's current limitations would be helpful.
Sure. So, well, I mean, there are some quite concrete limitations, like we don't have every single scientific paper that's ever been published. Things like this. We're getting more things into our database as quickly as we can legally, but yeah, currently limited there. I think I'm not sure if that's quite the spirit of the question, though. I think if I take us in the direction of, rather than a sort of missing data kind of perspective, is there some sort of cognitive task which is just out of reach at the moment? And I think that is true. For example, if we wanted to do something like read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica and give like a couple of paragraph summary or something like this, like that's just not something that even if we had all the data available to us, there isn't yet good enough machine learning technology, even with factor cognition, to do that. It's not even really clear what a good job of that would even mean, to be honest. So there's kind of stages towards that of just where the amount of cognitive work isn't really a fit for machine learning models at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. I'd need to know a bit more about the kind of, if there's specific concerns or specific limitations that are of interest. But it isn't the case that, you can do absolutely anything that you could possibly do with a team of 1,000 people over 1,000 years with Elicit. That would be a claim that we'd make at the moment. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, a couple of things to add here, I guess, just in the concretely, like as you're using it, things to keep in mind. All of the information is grounded in academic papers. So if you're looking for something that's not going to be in an academic paper, like currently we don't have policy memos, for example, you're probably not going to find a good answer to that. And I think Elicit's not really the best place to look up facts. Like Google's probably still better for looking up facts. But if you're, if it's something that you're trying to summarize across academic papers, Elicit is much better. And then, it tends to, I think in our experience, it's a little bit worse for theory-related questions relative to empirical research, like randomized control trials or even kind of empirical work in machine learning. And then just so, I think as we've tried really hard to automate parts of research, it's become abundantly clear to us that language models and AI are very far from automating your job. So I think you really don't have to worry about that, because a lot of the really complex extractions you need to do for systematic reviews are just really hard. So it's like actually still pretty hard to figure out what were all the different studies done within a single paper, within a systematic review, or even within kind of a primary study, what were all the different trials, what were all the interventions specific to those trials. Models still really struggle with that. So a lot of the really careful, detailed extractions you need to do or analysis you do is still really hard for models and therefore Elicit.
Great. Yeah, I think that just a couple of quick things that people asked are how many papers I can handle. And so, yeah, in Extract, as Jungwon showed, we can handle about 100 papers at a time, but we're scaling out more. And in Find Papers and Discover Concepts, we search hundreds of millions of papers, but then display a limited subset of those. But then the next big question that we have is about meta-analysis. There are several questions here, and I'll just highlight one of them, which is, do future plans for Elicit include integration of an analytical pipeline so you can use the results for conducting a meta-analysis? Generally, people are asking about what are the plans for using Elicit for meta-analysis?
Is anyone particularly interested in taking this one? Yeah, I think broadly, kind of in the same way that I walked you through the different workflows and how they build on top of each other. So first finding papers, extracting data papers from the papers, and then summarizing concepts across the papers. We want to kind of build those steps on top of each other to automate a complete meta-analysis. So over the last couple of months, we've been working on the extract step. And as a team, we're actually thinking about, okay, now that if we can kind of accurately extract a bunch of information from the papers, how do we automate the analysis step? So we're actually actively thinking about that now. Hopefully that can be another workflow we introduce into Elicit as well.
Yeah, I think that covers that one. And we're excited to see more meta-analysis features. Then there's a cluster of questions about the corporas, the corpora, and generally where we pull our papers from. So I will highlight one of those questions. Generally, people are asking about what paper sources Elicit uses, what corpora it searches, and several people had specific questions about what sources we will add in the future. So for example, sources from humanities, academia.org, their own custom university libraries.
Yeah, I can get started on this. So the main corpus that we use at the moment is from a nonprofit organization called Semantic Scholar, and they've got a couple of hundred items in their database which we consider, and that's updated every week. And we kind of fold those into our system, into Elicit. We're interested in enriching that with some other data sources, like there's one called OpenAlex, which has a slightly different set of papers and some different data. So that's kind of more of a, I guess more of like an enriching exercise rather than a sort of massively expanding breadth of a move. After that point, yeah, I mean, there was a few suggestions that were mentioned there when you were talking, Jeremy. I think one that we're really interested in is connecting with institutions' private libraries, because there could just be stuff that is never going to be available through some kind of public data set. And yeah, we've heard from users that would be really, really useful. So if they've got a connection to Read Elsevier or something, or maybe they've just got a Dropbox full of PDFs, these are the kind of use cases that we'd be interested in exploring. I can't remember if there were there other elements to that question or other angles to take here?
I think generally people are asking about one angle to take here is about the sort of bias in the coverage. So some people are concerned about the risk that the sources that we have, the corpora that we have, like Semantic Scholar, are biased systematically towards a certain set of papers, maybe from like maybe more prestigious institutions or more like institutions that are seen as having like people that have more citations. Generally, there may be some systematic biases in terms of the countries the papers are from, the universities they're from, and so they're concerned about that risk of systematic bias in Elicit.
Yeah, so I think one important point here is that we don't consider the citation count when we're looking for relevant papers at the start of a paper search process, for example. So we're excited to have the broadest range of papers that we can possibly get our hands on to be available in the app inside of Elicit, and then we do the retrieval based on a kind of more nuanced semantic similarity kind of a measure, rather than just the journal or number of citations or something like that. So if there were a less well-known paper that is, talking directly about the topic that you're interested in, then we would tend to surface that much more, higher up the list than something which is tangentially related but has a ton of citations. So I think, combining that aspect with us wanting to cast the net as wide as we can and pull in papers as broadly as we can, I think are the two things which should add up to us, not like solving for bias, unfortunately, but yeah, kind of surfacing the right stuff, the relevant stuff, the helpful things, rather than just popular things.
Great. Thanks for those answers to those questions. So a next question that I think we should answer is, why is it still free? So some people ask, why is Elicit still free currently? And if we could expand on the plans for changing from an open source to a paid subscription. Some people are asking about how Elicit will make money to support itself and what parts of it will remain free in the future.
Yeah, I can take this one. So we wanted it to be free because we're just really excited about scaling up high quality reasoning. We really want people to have access to all of the rich information that happens in science. We want kind of discovery to be really democratized, and we don't want high quality reasoning to be something that is basically a luxury good. So as much as possible, we're going to offer the things we can for free so that we can really give access to high quality research information and reasoning to a lot of people. That being said, it's, these models, unlike traditional software, are actually pretty expensive to run. And so when you do really computationally intensive work in Elicit, it does cost a lot of money. So for the things that that are more expensive for us to run, we'll charge on top of that. So like I said, we'll kind of roll out charging in different stages. In the first stage, there will be a way to use some of the Elicit features for free. So like searching over public papers, kind of like you can in Elicit today. A lot of the stuff you can do in Elicit today will largely continue to be free. If you want to do more intensive work, like extracting data from hundreds of thousands or hundreds of papers, or summarizing topics across 50 papers pretty intensively, then you can pay for that. And again, you can buy different credits, use them on the platform, and that so that's kind of what we're thinking about. We know that people are currently spending a lot of labor and spending a lot of money hiring research assistants to do some of this work. So using Elicit will be strictly faster and cheaper, like really significantly cheaper. And so we're kind of excited about helping save up resources that way that can be reallocated to other types of research.
Sweet. I think the next question is quite related to that, so I'll put it up. It's, are we planning to release an API or open source capabilities?
Yeah, we get a lot of API requests. I think it's really important. We want to be, an API is a really big project. A lot of times people are asking for many different things when they ask for an API. So I think we want to be really thoughtful about doing that as much as possible. We'd like to just build the experience directly in Elicit and really make Elicit the place where you can flexibly run a lot of really rich research workflows. At a point where I think that later down the road, if things become really stable, it might make sense to launch an API. But right now, our focus is on providing a really superior experience on Elicit.
Great. Okay, we've covered a lot already. I think that the next set of questions are about discipline coverage. So does Elicit restrict itself to STEM areas? Does it support the humanities? And sort of what main user groups is it most useful for right now?
Yeah, our largest user groups are people in biomedicine and machine learning. Those also happen to be just some of the largest academic domains. I think that's a big part of why. And like I said before, it works best for kind of empirical research relative to theoretical research. But the coverage is quite broad, the coverage of papers we have. And so I think we have a really long tail of people who are using it for anthropology, social studies, human-computer interaction, where we see a lot of diversity on the platform.
Great. There's another set of questions about sort of data privacy. People are especially asking about, do the PDFs get uploaded to our servers? How are they stored? And sort of worries about avoiding copyright violations.
I'm happy to take that one. I'm also happy for someone else to jump in if they want to.
Maybe Panda, do you want to jump in here to talk about PDF storage? Oh, let me unmute you.
Yes. So right now the story, if you upload PDFs, is that we don't really store them at all. So, if you use this extract workflow that was demoed today, you're going to put some PDFs in, you can ask questions of them. Once you close the tab, they're just gone. You also probably saw, though, during that demo, we talked about this library research project stuff. And so in the near future, we will have an option to upload papers that will be stored on your account. And so you can reuse them multiple times. This is also kind of in the world where we're syncing with Zotero, we'd be doing this sort of thing. That will be very clear when you give us a paper that you want to be stored on an account. It's going to be very obvious that this is a thing that's being stored. You'll be able to delete them off your account. And I think the core thing to remember is these are not going to be incorporated into our the main search. So if you upload a paper, this will not show up in someone else's searches. We're not training on the papers that you upload. Those are specific to you. At some point in the future, we may provide some sort of research team features, so you could share them with some other people. But again, that will like always fundamentally be in your control. So yeah.
Great, thanks, Panda. I think that we have about 7 minutes left planned for this webinar. So I think that maybe the next question that would be great to cover is one that was asked in the chat that Andreas has already addressed somewhat, which is just what is the future vision and roadmap for Elicit and for OT as an organization? So I will add that question, and then maybe Andreas and Jungwon can address that one.
Yeah, I can start with the thing that I already said in the chat as well, which is the long-term vision is to scale up good reasoning, to make it so that good reasoning is cheap and broadly available, both in science and then also beyond science. And then within science, give a three-step plan. I think this plan might be secret, but I'm going to tell you now anyway. So it's a three-step plan which starts by automating knowledge kind of discovery, like kind of in situations where you already know there is an answer somewhere out there in science, you just need to find it. Like that's the first step. The best tool for figuring out answers to questions that already exist. Once you have done that, the second step is to help you with discovering new facts. So I think in chat, some people pointed out that democratizing discovery is kind of the slogan here, make it so that everyone can become a researcher. And then the third step is use all that knowledge to help people and organizations make better decisions. So it's a pretty broad, long plan, but we'll stick with it.
Great. Did you want to add anything to that, Jungwon?
No, I think he's got it.
Sweet. Okay, well, then we have about 5 minutes to answer a few more questions. I think that one question here are about, or some questions here are about transparency. So people are concerned about, for example, for doing systematic reviews, they need repeatable searches so they can see all of their search steps and then show them to other collaborators or to publications. And they're also concerned about being able to see all of the references that were used and how it searched the databases and what databases were searched. So generally, there are some questions about how can Elicit ensure transparency?
Andres, you want to take that one? Or Maggie? Anyone else?
I can start and then Maggie can chime in. I think, so we've partly already seen it in the demo, which is one of the big components of transparency is actually showing the steps that Elicit goes through as it comes up with its answer. I think that's maybe the key distinguishing feature between the new beta and the old product, is being much more explicit about like, here's what Elicit is actually doing. And so that in an upcoming version, you can actually go back and feel like, if you don't like what it's doing, you can be like, no, you should consider these papers, or you should cluster these concepts together, so you kind of have control over everything that happens. Maggie, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, just to like tell people that we're definitely actively thinking about this, and I'm thinking about it from a design perspective of like, we have yet to have interfaces that need to explain themselves to us or explain their reasoning to us so far in the history of computing, and this is now something that's going to be needed. So it's a really interesting space to try to figure out how to get a system like Elicit to kind of show you exactly how it made decisions at every stage and let you explore that without overwhelming you. So like you can just use it and get an answer quickly when you want, but if you really want to kind of be like, this answer doesn't seem right, we want you to be able to sort of dive in and break it apart and see each step and how it reasoned, and then be able to kind of unpack that and then decide for yourself whether the answer is trustworthy or not.
Great. Okay.
Should we take one more question, Jeremy? Last question?
Yeah, sounds good. The last question is about credits. So we showed a demo of the future pricing of Elicit that's focused on credits. And some people are a little confused, I think, or have questions about that. So they want to know about how they can translate credits into an estimated cost. And more specifically, for example, how can they translate 5,000 credits into some amount of analysis or research?
Yeah, we'll probably show you once we'll show you in the I don't know. Maggie, do you want to take this one? Yeah, if you want, you can explain this one as well.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so we were currently exploring different ways to do pricing, like because as Jogan mentioned, like some of these workflows are quite expensive for us, and we need to be able to make it affordable for everyone, but also make it so that like every time you click a button, you're not worried about like spending money. That's quite a stressful experience. So we settled on this credits model where you'll buy credits up front, and then you'll use credits within the app to run different things. And then when your credits run out, you can top up. So in the same way, if any of you live in cities that have like top-up cards on like public transportation systems, it's very much the same thing. You kind of top up your card. You don't have to think about it until it runs low, and then you top it back up. We could certainly explore doing things like adding like estimation calculators, if that would be helpful somewhere, like on the pricing page, being like, if you run this many workflows, about how many credits will it cost? So we're open to improving it, or like hearing people's experiences of it and then taking it from there.
Yeah, I think this is another thing that's like going to be really different with these new models. It's really changing kind of they are able to automate so much complex work, but it will kind of come with a new business model. And so that's another thing that we have to think about. Yeah, so thanks for all of your thinking on that, Maggie. I think you've done a really great job already, like making it a lot more clear and intuitive. So we just have a minute left, so I want to wrap up. Thank you guys so much for coming. It was amazing when we sent out the link to the town hall, how many people immediately joined and then started talking about how amazing Elicit was. I like came back to the chat page a few days later and was like, wow, people have been having insane conversations here. I didn't realize there were people who were just like excited to chat on webinar pages. But we're so honored and grateful and encouraged by all of your support. It's incredible to build tools for you. And every time we talk to some of you to do user research, I think I walk away so inspired about how much you guys are pushing forward the frontier of what we understand as humanity in this world, and how we can make the world better, how we can continue to discover new breakthroughs that really improve people's lives or kind of the ecological health of our planet or our institutions. So every single one of you are doing really amazing work. Research is so hard. We have to do a lot of it as well, because so much of the technology we use, no one understands and no one knows what is or isn't possible. And it can be really discouraging, but it's so great to build for people who care a lot about truth, who are kind of motivated by progress and making the world a better place. We're just very inspired by you. So I hope today you can go and continue on your research work as well and have some strength, and we'll continue to try and make that as easy for you as possible. Yeah, especially I think with language models, the kind of good progress, good process, and good rigor is going to be really, really important. So it's important for people like us to have a really high standard for what we demand from these tools, what we demand from our work, but also continue to make that easier and easier so that doing the right thing is not so costly or expensive. So thank you for being amazing users. It's such an honor to build for you. Good luck with your research. It's really hard, but the stuff that you're doing is really important, and we'll continue trying to make it easy along the way. So thank you.